Meeting to order. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
All will be noted with the exception of Councilmember Walsh, who is excused for the evening.
Very good, thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's jump into the agenda. Item 2A, minutes of the regular city council meeting on August 15th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 2B, minutes of the city council work session from August 19th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those
So moved.
minutes.
Second.
The motion a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 4, consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. All right. Item 5A, recognition of service of Dale Graham Bush, Charter Commission member. Ms. Crawford.
My apologies, Mayor. I'm going to kick it to Assistant City Manager Juba.
Mayor and council members. Tonight we're here honoring Dale Grambush's 22 years on the city's Charter Commission. Now, having a charter is a little bit unique. White Bear Lake is one of 107 cities in the state of Minnesota that operates under a charter. There's 855 cities in the state. So it makes us a little bit unique, and our charter has been in place since 1921. The Charter Commission's a 15-member board that's made up of people that are appointed by the Chief Judge of Ramsey County. And during Dale's 22 years on the Charter Commission, he's gone through 2 redistricting processes, which is a huge undertaking, and 5 charter amendments. And charter amendments themselves are scrutinized very heavily by the commission because they ultimately change how the city's governed. So during those processes, Dale's acute attention to detail has been an incredible asset to the commission and will be greatly missed. So while we're celebrating his time with the Charter Commission tonight, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his overall commitment to this community. So White Bear Lake prides itself on volunteerism, and Dale has been found anywhere from Market Fest to Manitou Days to many other causes throughout the community. So thank you so much for your time on the Charter Commission, and thank you so much for always raising your hand in this great city.
Well, very good. Well, I'll echo what Mr. Juba said. I have the privilege of knowing Mr. Grambush personally, and for a few years there, we did overlap and serve on the Charter Commission together. It's one of those things that it's not a huge time commitment, but when issues do come up, it's really, really important. And it's one of the few kind of touch points that we have with a citizen board that isn't appointed by anyone with the city. It's through the Chief Judge of Ramsey County. So it's important work. It's one piece among many things that you do for the community. So this award is well deserving, and I'd ask you to come forward now and accept your tiny bear. Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you again. We appreciate it. All right. Item 5B, Community Development Biannual Report. Mr. Lindahl.
Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight I'll be running through the activities for various parts of and duties of the Community Development Department for the first half of the year. So the report that's included in your packet includes information in 4 areas of activity for the Community Development Department. Overall building permit information, code enforcement activity, zoning cases and activity, and then at the request of the council, after some feedback during our zoning update process, we've also included rental housing information. So what you'll, generally from the building department, what I'm going to, next couple of slides is I'm going to show you are the, some context for like the the numbers for the entire year of 2024 and some comparisons of over time, but we'll talk more specifically about the numbers for the first half of 25. So in 2024, we saw just over 3,500 permits with a valuation of just over 110 million and permit fees of 1.2 million. So this chart shows you building permit activity for the entire years of these specific years going back to 2010. And so what you'll see here is what we've talked about the last couple of years is a noticeable decrease in permit activity since a peak in 2022. There were a couple, but an overall fairly similar level dating back to 2010. So a couple of things that explain the peaks in 2021 and 2022 coming off of a COVID year where there was less activity, so some pent-up activity that didn't happen during COVID, and then that corresponding to more significant projects like the Barnum apartment building and all the school districts activity that occurred in those years. So now what we're seeing is what generally we see specifically in the building permit data, we're seeing more generally throughout the community development activity, at least related to building kinds of things. And that's a return to what we feel like is the new normal. So in your staff report, you'll see that building permit data continues to trend downward, similar to in the last couple of years. But what I think is most noticeable about the building permit data is the number of permits. The total number of permits compared to the first half of 24 to the first half of 25 is down 11%. And so that's not insignificant, but it's not the more noticeable increases that you're seeing in valuation or permit fees. And again, what I would correspond that to is the increases that we saw were a few bigger projects with higher valuations, so that's kind of skewed the numbers in the building department. So again, in the building department, overall numbers of permit are down slightly, but there's a more significant impact on the valuation and the total revenue. And just as part of another thing to note from the building permit activity is, I believe the city managers have mentioned a couple times that we did have one of our inspectors move on to a different position at the end of June. So really kind of during the peak season of permitting, we've been down one inspector too. So that's corresponded to a lower level of activity, but it seems like the staff in general has been working pretty hard to fill that gap. So taking a look at code enforcement activity, there's a more detailed chart in your packet. But what I would highlight here for you here is, the motor vehicle related kinds of code enforcement activities is the highest one in this particular first half analysis. What's down significantly in the overall numbers compared to this year to last year is the weed and grass complaints, and we just generally attributed that to a particularly really wet spring last year that we think we had those permits were just higher because of the weather conditions. And we also, that was the first spring of the current code enforcement officer, and I think she just did a really good job of communicating maybe with some people that had kind of habitual kind of long grass kinds of situations. And I think, so we've seen reduced weather conditions related to that, and I think just more consistent enforcement on that. If you're looking at code enforcement by ward, you'll see that Ward 5 has the highest percentage of complaints. 3 and 5 tend to have the higher numbers, but generally a pretty even distribution throughout the community. Taking a look at the zoning activities, you'll see that overall the numbers here show, and the total numbers on the far right side, first half numbers are in the more kind of brownish color, and then of 24, and then 25 is in that more mustard colored. And you'll see that the difference in total cases and activities through planning department is really only 7 total overall. So really what we're seeing here is, while there's some changes in individual numbers, like some of the zoning permit and overall building permit review numbers are a little bit down, that corresponds to the changes in the building permit activity. But basically we're seeing zoning activity holding about steady. And then rental license data is added this time around. And so what we have here is a rental license data by type, either single units or multifamily units, and then also by ward. And so what you see here is that wards 1 and 2 have about the same amount of total permits between singles and multi-units. And together, those 2 wards have 95 and 100 permits respectively, and they're about twice the number of permits in wards 3, 4, and 5. What's not shown here, and I think what we can start to do to dig into these numbers a little bit more, is the multi-unit numbers are really just for one particular multi-unit building. So we can start to give you numbers that are a little bit more broken down, so you can see like total numbers of units by ward, and we can get you that as we wrap up, in the year wrap-up report that comes in January. So I think the overall message is, while we're seeing some decreases in the building permit data that's trickling into other sections of the zoning activity, for example, the decrease has been in a few large projects, with only really a smaller percentage increase in the total numbers of permits, and really a return to what we think was more of a status quo kinds of numbers for a fully developed community like White Bear Lake. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. One quick question. Do we track kind of what the turnaround time is for permit application and final approval? Is that a metrics that we shoot to achieve some level of proficiency on?
Well, I can tell you that what we shoot for is that permits get turned around in 10 working days. Once they get to kind of the building permit stage. So, if you're coming in for a zoning approval and it's going through planning commission, obviously there's a different time scale for that. But once you get to the building permit stage, whether it's a new building, sometimes if you're talking like some of the bigger apartment buildings, obviously it takes longer. There's a longer lead time. But the average permit is we're trying to get things through in 10 working days. And to more precisely answer your question, we haven't been tracking our, how much we're hitting that goal. I can just tell you that there's a pretty strong ethic to try and get through things as quick as possible for works, because we know that in Minnesota the building season's short. So.
Thank you. Council questions for Mr. Lindahl. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lindahl, I'm looking at the chart provided in the packet, I guess it would be page 5C, and I'm looking down at both the permit totals by number and the permit valuation. This is something new that just struck me this evening. Of the categories that we have there, would it be correct to say that the vast majority of them reflect commercial activity? That there are a couple of line items for what I'm assuming SF dwelling new. I'm assuming that's single family dwelling new. And I'm not quite sure what alt is, but there's another one for single family dwelling alt. Would those be, if I were going to ask myself, are the citizens of our community investing in their homes, upkeep, expansions, renovations, storm repairs, et cetera? Is that the place to go looking for that kind of data, or is there a different place? Is there a different set of data? And do you have any, I realize I didn't ask this in advance, but any kind of your professional sense? How is that going in our community?
So Mayor, members of the council, I think you asked a really good question. The numbers don't kind of do break this down a little bit. What you see there in where it talks commercial, industrial, or single-family dwellings with either new or the alt, the alt is, I'm sorry, the word is escaping me, but not new. It's making any other sort of kind of investment in the property. So that could be windows, that could be roof, that could be water heater, any of those types of improvements. So that's where you would go to look for the data for that. So, I mean, if you just look at quickly what you're seeing year to date for single family, new, that's basically 1.5 million in White Bear Lake, and then 7.5 million for alternatives. And so I would say, at least in the new category, the majority of those are new homes that are, happening in Matamidi as part of the work that we do. But we certainly could start to dig into the data to try and give you a council a breakdown of more specific kinds of things that are included in that investment category.
I'm not going to ask for that at this point. It's so the question of investment in the community that's kind of an important topic. My sense, and I haven't done a deep dive on that, I don't expect you to have either, but up until this year, commercial, which I'm going to kind of guess might also include schools, investments have been substantially outpacing the investments in private home, in single home or family home. But nonetheless, those family investments in their dwellings are not insignificant, and they seem relatively stable. Does that mesh with kind of your sense, or do you not have a clear picture of that? Again, I'm not expecting an expert response here.
Well, and looking at the building, mayor, members of the council, looking at the table that Councilmember Edberg is referring to, if you look at the single-family numbers, the first three columns are White Bear Lake year-to-date, Matamidi year-to-date, and then the total year-to-date. And so I'm sorry, what I should have said is, there is still, just by sheer numbers, there's more investment that's happening in, and I'm sorry, what I'm looking here is I'm looking at the middle column for valuation, and maybe we should go up to the first columns or rows in the top. So you'll see, new homes in White Bear Lake 3, 4 in Matamidi, total of 7 in the first half of the year, and then the alternate kind of all the other kinds of permits, you'd see 333 in White Bear Lake, 112 in Matamidi, for a total of 445. So there's just by sheer numbers, there's still, a lot more activity in White Bear Lake by comparison.
All right. Thank you.
Council, any other questions for Mr. Lindahl? All right. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. All right, item 6, public hearings. We have nothing scheduled. Item 7, unfinished business. Second reading of an ordinance amending the municipal code replacing chapter 603 for parking. Mr. Anderson, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we're here tonight for a second reading of the rewrite of the city's parking ordinance. This was a kind of the culmination of a pretty lengthy endeavor amongst staff. There was a lot of discussions and recommendations from various department heads, police, public works, administration. Pretty much everyone at City Hall was very involved in this process, and we talked a lot about this at first reading. In addition to some general cleanup and I would say a modernization of existing code language to kind of bring things into conformance with today's practices and what may be enforceable, what may not be. There's also a lot of new language, or I should say some new language proposed, most of which seem generally acceptable to the council at first reading. All that is laid out in the materials. There were two items specifically that prompted, I guess I would call it some additional discussions during first reading. One is the trailer-only parking prohibition on city streets, or at least a prohibition on trailer-only parking longer than 30 minutes. There was some concern from the council that an abrupt change could create some concerns, or at least some issues with residents. And so based on some of the council discussion there, staff did clarify in the new language that that provision wouldn't take effect until May 1st of 2026. That would offer staff some time to, reach out, communicate, get the word out, leave the status quo in place at least through this lake season, through the winter, and then we'd be ready to begin enforcing, or at least having the discussion with folks when it takes effect after May 1st, 2026, if there are incidents. And then the other big topic at first reading was, or at least one that warranted some discussion, was the winter parking restrictions or snow-related restrictions. As you may or may not know, currently the city prohibits parking between November and April on city streets or in municipal parking lots for periods longer than 24 hours, and also prohibits parking on city streets or in municipal parking lots when more than 3 inches of snow falls. Generally speaking, from staff's perspective and public works and police, those are really hard to enforce and not as effective as we'd like them to be from the standpoint of snow removal efforts. And so what staff is recommending at this point is language that would prohibit overnight parking between November and through March of every year from the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. And would also, I'm just pulling up my memo. It would also prohibit parking in municipal lots following any accumulation of snow. And again, this is to avoid the enforceability issues that they're dealing with a lot when the restrictions are triggered by a certain threshold of snowfall, which is very complicated from that enforcement standpoint. So in the ordinance in front of you tonight that's in your packet, from a snow or a winter parking restriction standpoint, there are two options. Option one, which is this new proposed language. There's also option two, which is generally identical to the existing language, except it reduces the threshold from 3 inches to 1 inch. And then at the council's request, I also provided some very sample snow emergency language, just to give you a flavor of what that looks like. There was some discussion at first reading about, does it make sense to have an ability to call snow emergencies? In further discussions with staff, staff is still strongly recommending option one. There is not a desire to implement any sort of snow emergency language in the code. Again, at the council's request, we did include some language to give you an idea of what that would look like. But of the three options, I would say option one is staff's preference, followed by, if you'd rather not do option one, we'd prefer that you leave the status quo, or at least the existing language, but reduce the threshold to 1 inch in terms of snowfall. Finally, I want to add that regardless of what the council chooses to move forward with as it relates to the new parking ordinance and the language that's being proposed and recommended by staff, there's an immediate need tonight to establish these additional restricted areas near the new high school campus. That was based on council direction this past spring, maybe early summer. I think it was around March. There were a couple meetings and a lot of studies that staff did leading up to those meetings, where there were a few areas and city streets that we want to make sure non-residents or non-individuals that are living in those neighborhoods can't park in. We do want to keep the ability to park on those city streets available to residents so that they can, of course, park in the street or potentially have their guests park in the street. But just due to a lot more traffic, all of the different athletic and other amenities that the high school offers to try to keep traffic and parking more particularly away from those areas so that people can't look to those neighborhoods just for a more convenient place to park. Because, just the way the neighborhoods are laid out, there are some locations that might be closer to a field that they would choose to park in rather than an available parking lot, which is seemingly very available in terms of spaces based on the new construction and the new project. So for all those reasons, again, staff recommends that the council conduct its second reading tonight, adopt the proposed ordinance, but when doing so, make sure to specify whether you seek any changes related specifically to snow-related provisions or choose which of the options you want to go with. And then if the new ordinance is adopted tonight, there's a companion resolution that would authorize summary publication of the ordinance. What I would say is, regardless of whether there's a split council or any kind of decision that may not be unanimous with respect to the actual ordinance, if the ordinance passes, I would strongly encourage all 4 council members that are present and able to vote tonight to still move forward with the summary resolution, which is simply a cost-saving measure that would allow the city to save money in terms of what we publish to make the ordinance effective. And then there is finally a third resolution which restricts the parking near the new high school campus as summarized in the report. And that, again, is consistent with council discussion and direction that was provided a few months ago when this was before the council originally. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that we have department heads here. We have the police chief. We have public works and engineering, administration. So happy to talk through this, and I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Council, do we have any questions for staff or comments on whether you favor option 1 or 2? Councilmember Edward.
I'm not satisfied with either option 1 or 2, and I'm prepared to offer an amendment or a motion that deletes all reference to overnight parking and trailer parking, that we take that up next year after we've had more time to thoroughly consider all of the ramifications, implementation, and receive feedback from our community. So I'm just presaging the conversation by telling you where I'm at. I'm not going to vote for either one of those.
Okay. Anyone else feel strongly about this? Councilmember West.
Yeah, I'm still concerned about particularly the folks who are living near the multifamily housing that park on the streets and not having an option. I just don't know where they park if we have kind of this complete no parking. So I would want to look into it longer too.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take a contrarian view. I like the idea of option 1. And as I said when we did the first reading, nothing's irreversible. Change is always difficult, and there's going to be some consternation, some issues, but I do place a high premium on making sure that our Public Works Department can operate as efficiently as possible, particularly in a snowstorm or when we have a snow event or condition. I think everybody has a neighbor or someone on their street where the plow comes by and then it has to jet out. And then depending on the conditions, that chunk of ice can sit there for days, weeks, depending on how things, how the weather conditions are. I know other communities, it's pretty common to not be allowed to park on the street 24/7, 365, even in July. We're just talking about doing it where there's an operational need when there's snow. So I'm hearing what the council's saying, and I don't think it's we're at critical mass that we need to jump into it, but, and more conversations are certainly okay, but I'd like to try it. I'd like to see what it looks like if we get cars off the street during those hours and see if we can, just keep the streets even more clean. I think Public Works does a great job, but this just can take our city services to the next level. I do have one question for Mr. Coppy. So I'm going to defer to your expertise, but I want to explain how this makes sense in my head. If we have more snow, more ice buildup that accumulates and stays on our streets for weeks, months, the whole winter, if you go through a cold spell. It makes sense to me that degrades our roads and helps, it precipitates the roads breaking down sooner than if we can clear out all the snow on a much more efficient, higher percentage basis. Am I totally off on that, or is there actually a cost savings to longevity in our roads by doing this and clearing the streets more efficiently?
Mayor, members of the council, very good question. I guess I have two kind of responses to it. First is the snow and ice itself. The longer it sits there, primarily in the spring, but any freeze-thaw cycle, whether it be, we get a warm day in January and we have freeze-thaw, it can degrade the road. That's what gets down in the pores of the pavement, and the water gets down in there, it freezes, it pops. So the more snow that we can get off, obviously, helps the road condition. The other thing is that if we do have to go and add additional salt, it's additional cost, it's additional, and salt degrades the road even further. So to what degree, I don't know that I can tell you, but kind of anecdotally that both of those cases, whether it be adding more salt or more freeze-thaw cycles, would definitely degrade the road more.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. So I offer that up to the council. Just there might be disruption. People don't like it, but that's a big part of what we do is figure out how we can make the city run more efficiently and more cost effective. And our street reconditioning projects are a huge line item on our budget every year. And if something could potentially help, I think it's worth taking a shot. So those are my thoughts. Councilmember West.
Maybe, can I ask what would happen if people did not follow this regulation, like even now, if they're continuing to park and we say that and we don't want them to park on a city street, not on one of our parking lots, like what should happen and what does happen?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I understand your question correctly, Councilmember West, right now in the winter, if it's over the 3-inch mark, we do everything in our power to get a hold of the vehicle owner before we have to take any steps. Likely a citation would be issued if it's a problem. And if we can't get a hold of the owner and a tow truck is waiting to clear the street at that area, if there's a tow truck available, which it's their busy time as well during those events, then we'll tow the vehicle out of the way.
Thank you.
Hughes.
Yeah, I have a question. What is happening with the trailers that we're getting them off after 30 minutes? Like, what complaints have we heard that we're saying that trailers sitting there without a truck attached to it are a big nuisance and we're moving them? What prompted that change? Or is that just something that all cities have and we are coming up to date?
Mayor, Councilmember Hughes, I have to dig deep here because it was months ago. So if anyone wants to chime in and help me out, please do. We took a holistic look at the ordinance while we had it open. What triggered the opening of it was the school parking and permit parking. So we did take a holistic look at it, and quite frankly, I don't remember. My office hasn't received complaints about trailer parking, but we did recently, a year and a half ago, enact no boat trailer parking in some areas of town. And I suppose to take a holistic look at that because some of our roads are very old and narrow and we don't have the space. So if anyone remembers that, Chief or Director Copy?
Mayor, members of the council, some of it came up through our conversations at the public works level. There are times where people store trailers, they don't fit in their yard, so they have their boat trailer, whether it be, with the boat on it, off of it. Utility trailers that, should be stored, in somebody's driveway, their garage, their yard. They can pose, and I'll let the chief jump in as well, but they can pose safety hazards if they're not reflected. They're, just kind of sitting there. The back of a car has taillights, whatnot. So
just from a safety standpoint as well as a maintenance standpoint. They're sitting there. They're much harder to get somebody to move in the event, you know, we're sweeping the streets, we're doing street maintenance, trimming trees, things like that. They get in the way and they're typically sit there for long periods of time. But maybe Jason has any comments from a zoning standpoint from parking those types of vehicles as well.
Mayor and members of the council, I guess I would just echo Paul's comments in that you might have remembered that in the slides that I showed you, motor vehicle complaints and code enforcement are the highest, at the highest level, although not that much higher than a few other things. And those complaints relate to, or those code enforcement cases relate to just the parking of vehicles on private property, not necessarily, not at all on public property. There's really a pretty clear line between if you have a motor vehicle issue that's on private property that's handled by community development and code enforcement versus in the public right-of-way, which is handled by engineering and then enforcement by the police department. So, but as you can guess, I think there's a relationship to those things, which I think is what Paul's point is here, in that in areas of town where you have smaller lots and people have, you know, recreational vehicles, there are times where those things get pushed just for lack of space into the public right-of-way.
And I would add too, Mayor and Council, one of the issues that I recall during the discussion with staff was that, and keep in mind the language just prohibits trailer-only parking. So if you have your vehicle attached to the trailer, that's okay. I think the concern was related to people that were storing trailers on city streets for long periods of time, which was a problem. Obviously, streets are supposed to be used for circulation, traffic, things like that. And there was some concern that allowing trailer-only parking would create situations where people were putting trailers or trailers with boats on them or other things by themselves on the street because they don't want to park them somewhere else or they don't want to store their boat or things of that nature. So keep in mind there are some existing trailer-related restrictions in Ward 2. None of this would affect that. There are certain streets in Ward 2 that the parking of trailers alone or trailers connected to vehicles is prohibited. This would be just a more trailer-only citywide restriction on city streets. But of course, it is a new provision recommended by staff, certainly up for discussion and debate by the council. So
I guess following up on that, I wouldn't mind a provision, I don't think, where trailers were not allowed to be parked overnight. A half an hour is right off kind of a problem for me. Had a lot of work done on my house, and those guys park their trailer and then go to lunch. And I assume it's not a 2-hour lunch, but hey, maybe it is. I don't know. And I don't have a problem with that because they're, you know, that's the nature of the business anyway, that the trailer's going to be there. But I would think that maybe just limiting them to not being able to park overnight would maybe get at that problem if that's what is occurring. On the parking overnight during a snow emergency, I mean, I hear you, Mr. Mayor, you know, you don't, you know, I get it. I've got people in my neighborhood where the snowplow is constantly going around the exact same car in the neighborhood in a couple different spots. But I also have people in my neighborhood who park outside on the street all the time. That is their parking spot. And while they probably can get it into their driveway or, you know, they share the driveway because it's, I don't know what is going on there. I don't need them to tell, I'm not trying to tell them to move their car for the entire winter, and I'm not really interested in that. I guess my kind of fundamental belief is, you know, the taxpayer really is the kind of owner of all this, and they're asking the city staff to take care of what they own, but I'm not hearing from any taxpayer that they're hacked off about too many people parking in the street and making a mess out of it, even though it's probably going to cost them more in the long run because it's going to cost more to have streets come by and either clean up the snow or whatever is left on there. But having said that, it is a nuisance, and so I'm wondering if there's some other way to write the snow emergency that basically just says if snow is falling at midnight, you have to move your car. And if there's already a pile, an inch on the road, move it. But if snow is falling, you have to move it. And I don't know what that looks like, but I don't mind it being a real deterrent for people to park there overnight when snow is falling, because that does happen all the time, and we all have a weather app. And I don't need Paul to get out there with a ruler. It's only 3/4 of an inch. I can't move them. I don't need that. But at the same time, if it's not snowing, I don't need my neighbors to move their car. That's where they park, and that's their right. And I'm not trying to take that away from them. Especially, I mean, how many arguments do we have around here about, oh, this multifamily housing business is going in, and we've given them 12. We've made them, have 12 parking spots, but they need 75. Well, the understanding is on that 60 of them are going to be parked on the street, and we've just kicked them all out. So I'm not really interested in doing that.
Well, you bring up a good idea. I really would like us to brainstorm and solve the goal of, when it's snowing out, you need to be off the road so we can plow properly. And when it's not snowing, I don't care either. So what's the in-between? The in-between is we have a snow emergency, which a declared snow emergency, which requires communication and different things. So, I mean, we can try that. I'm open to that. It's more a question for city staff. It sounds like that's pretty difficult to actually administer, which I can appreciate. But it would be nice to have some mechanism, even if it's just a trial for this winter to see how it goes. That makes sense. Councilmember Hughes.
And I don't mind it being less than an inch. I also don't mind dialing back to 8 o'clock at night, or whatever time period needs to take place in order to, whatever it is, so that, you're getting a plow out there at 3 o'clock in the morning. How do you step that back so that people can be notified, they have the chance to move their car? If they don't move their car, then the tow truck moves the car. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen in 15 minutes. So what's a reasonable time frame to try that out with a reasonable snowfall amount?
And for what it's worth, and I don't know if this was entirely clear, and if not, I can specify or clarify now. Most of the cities that have snow emergency language in their code, I mean, that supplements other types of like overnight parking restrictions, because the point of a snow emergency is we're declaring it during the day. We're getting a blizzard, and we need to have crews out all day effectively moving snow constantly, because it's one of those events where we don't want any cars on the street. What we have today is you're not supposed to park a vehicle for more than 24 hours on a street or in a parking lot between those, certain months. That one I don't think is ever probably enforced, because it's just impossible to know how long people are there. And by the time you think they might be there for 24 hours, then you have to start the clock and determine if they've been there for another 24 hours. So that really is meaningless from an enforceability standpoint and probably an effectiveness standpoint. The other one that we have in place today, which I suspect is what keeps things relatively effective for staff, although not perfect, is this whole, if you get 3 inches of snow, you can't park in a municipal lot or on a street. And so I would, I guess, urge the council, if you're thinking about this snow emergency option, to let staff study that a lot more before implementing anything and not do anything to that effect yet. The reason I say that is because I think that has to be implemented together with other restrictions similar to what we have today. It's just it really is just another tool staff would have to keep cars off the street during the day. Because then people are going to have the communication from either the news outlets or the city or whatever else that says you're not supposed to be on the streets until your street's totally plowed. So depending on what direction the majority of the council wants to go with, I would say either option 1 or option 2. If there's not an interest in option 2 with the reduction down to 1 inch and just leaving the status quo for now, then I guess you go option 2, but keep the threshold at 3 inches. And the only reason, again, that I say snow emergency language at this point wouldn't be a great idea is because I think a lot more thought and planning would have to go into it than staff has looked at least that's my take on it. If staff disagrees, let me know. The direction heading into tonight was really, what does that snow emergency language look like? That's why I included it in my staff report. But again, there's really no, in my view, path forward with that at this moment in time. So that's my take.
So if I'm reading the council right, there's not great consensus here, but and some would like some more study on this. I think community feedback would be helpful. I would suggest that at a minimum, option 2, as recommended, reducing it from 3 inches to 1 inch, does give us a little bit more flexibility, and just by doing it puts the community on notice a little bit that, hey, we're looking into this. It's being slightly more restrictive. There are more events where you need to be off the street, and it starts a conversation as we move towards maybe a more long-term solution. So I think that would be a wise course of action. Thoughts on option 2?
I'm not in favor of that either. So I go back, unpacking and having a whole bunch more conversation and community engagement. Leave the overnight parking and the trailer parking in place as they have been, enforce as we do or do not. That's fine. We can live with that for one more winter season. We've done it for at least 55 years that I know of, and we can do it one more. During that time, have these conversations, unpack it. We have no data to go on. We have no other feedback that says, here's how, or no shared understanding right now of here's how this piece impacts that piece, which needs this over here. We need to think our way through this comprehensively. So my sense of where a consensus might be is we've had a great conversation on other aspects of parking. I'm totally on board with the restricted parking around the school and the other stuff. I'm just saying, for one more year, figure this out, start the conversations, have it in place for next year. And that's my sense of where consensus lies.
Sure. I'm all for the scrapping the trailer thing. I mean, I'm not sold that there's a problem, so I'm not going to die on that hill. And I trust staff that they bring up valid concerns, but I don't think we're at, a crisis by any means, or even a problem. So I'm good with that. I really do think, after hearing how it's actually administered, the current 3-inch have to be off the streets. That's already there. And it sounds like, here, raise your hand if you didn't know about that. I didn't know about it until we started this conversation. I'm the mayor. So I want it to be published in the newspaper. It went from 3 to 1, if for no other reason for people to go, oh, I didn't know about that 1 inch, because I don't think it really changes much by going from 3 inches to 1 inch. As a matter of policy, by adopting this is saying, well, I think there's more of a compelling need to enforce what we've already had on the books for a long time at 3 inches, but at 1 inch, which is still enough to gum up the roads in a plowable event, no, we don't need to. So we're really not changing much, and it's very, very incremental, but it really does start the conversation and create some public awareness and give law enforcement an opportunity to just have that touch point. I'm confident that our law enforcement isn't, if we make this switch, going to come in heavy-handed and say, well, this is the change. And last week, well, you would have been okay because it's 2 inches, but now it's down to 1, so you're going to get towed. It's still going to be the same engagement, but it starts the conversation in such a with such a minor change, but an important conversation to have. So I don't think it's going to move the needle much. Mine is more just a public awareness to get it out there. So adopt option 2 or not, I don't care that much, but I think there is some value with very, very little cost in dropping it from 3 inches to 1 inch. Councilmember West.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't know that there's a problem that has been convincing about the trailers, so I'd like to not have that go forward. I think that we could do the public awareness campaign for the 3 inches and kind of see actually how that goes while we're gathering more information. I'm not convinced that folks, to your point, Mayor, that they really understand what the requirements are, and maybe we could be more thorough, more regular with communication. I wish that the city had more support for communication, to be quite honest. This is yet another example of that. But, you know, I think that we keep it as it is and gather more information and have a more thorough discussion next year.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I would just add that we've already for several years been publishing on social media at least, and through our police department, our department and the fire department. We have a pretty decent reach across the city on the 3-inch requirement, and almost ad nauseum. You know, when we go through the season, it might happen, I don't know, Mr. Coffey, 30 times, 20 times, 10 times. But nearly every time we dispatch our fleet to go out and plow, and it might not be a 3-inch event, but we still publish something saying it's time to move your vehicles, we need to plow the streets. And so that conversation has been ongoing for a long time. We do publish it in the newsletter every year. There should be some awareness about that.
Let me start here. I'm hearing consensus that we don't like the trailer restriction, right? Okay, so I'll put that. I'm hearing basically nobody in favor of my idea of option 2 and dropping from 3 inches to 1 inch, which is okay. I think I'm right, but it's your call. So we've got an ordinance before us. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance as amended, however someone would like, but I think we've got a good direction of long-term where we want to go, but we have something in front of us tonight, so what would we like to do? Councilmember Edberg.
I'll move that we adopt the parking ordinance as presented, with the exception of all references to trailer parking, and that with the understanding that we leave our 3-inch level in place at this time. My commitment, if that's acted on, we'll take that up and we'll have that in place for next year. We will have enough discussion to make that happen in a reasonable way. We'll understand what those implications are.
Okay, so just to tee that up, it's a motion to approve the ordinance before us, striking reference to the new trailer restriction parkings, and option 2, but we maintain the 3-inch threshold. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion on this, and did our city attorney want to clarify anything?
No, that works. I just wanted to make sure the trailer portion of that motion was only related to the new trailer language, because there is other existing trailer language that we have not changed. So I think your iteration works, Mayor.
I agree. As the maker, I concur with that interpretation.
Very good. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember West, or Hughes.
I just have one question. I thought don't we have a parking restriction during the winter if they're overnight, if there's snow falling? No. Okay. What do those signs say as you drive in? Like if you drive down 96, there's a big sign there right outside the sports center. Yeah. Anyway, I'll read it again. Okay. I thought there was already something that was, never mind.
Is it on 96?
Yeah.
What's a state highway, so.
Yeah, Mayor,
Yeah.
members of the council, that may be, depending on where you're at on 96, there's the township that borders it as well, so it could be a township sign. The township does have overnight parking
Maybe
restrictions.
it is. I was going to say, I thought it had our little bear in it, but maybe I'm giving them
Maybe
credit.
it's their bear.
It's their little bear.
And we can fight over whose bear it is.
Whoopsies. I think I've already read, I've always read that sign as ours. Anyway, thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The ordinance as amended is adopted. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the corresponding resolution publishing notification of our action. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a third resolution, or another resolution, involving the parking permit construct around the school. I'd entertain a motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion is second. Any
Mr.
further
Mayor.
discussion on that?
Yes.
Councilmember Hughes.
Could you explain that just a little bit more? How is that going to work? And do they have to pay a fee to get the permit? And do they have to pay a fee to get a second permit? Is it pretty simple?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we've started to prepare in anticipation for tonight. Our staff had regularly done this for the South Campus for years and years. It is an application. They come in, they can either do it online or they can come in for the application and complete it. We give them a little sticker. They stick it on the back of their rear view mirror, and it's nice and colorful so our officers can see which cars are supposed to be there and which ones aren't. There's no fee for that. They just have to prove their residency.
And so if like a homeowner is 4 people and they all can drive,
That's right.
can they ask for all 4 of them, or does each one of them have to file a
I believe that's true, yeah.
simple?
Yeah,
Okay, just curious.
yep.
And then there's a mechanism for guests, too? What does that look like?
You know, Mr. Copy, I don't know if you have a knowledge of that. I don't.
Mayor, members of the council, similar to what the chief had said, if for example, a resident was having a grad party, a wedding, something in their yard, they could request additional permits from the temporary permits from the police department to allow for that to happen. I don't know that it's happened all that many times down by South Campus, but if you read the existing language of the South Campus in the ordinance, that's what it states. Likewise with what police is working on with getting prepared for the permit parking area. Public Works has ordered signposts. We've determined locations. After tonight, we will get the signs ordered and up. We won't quite hit the target of the first day of school, but very shortly afterwards. And then Engineering and Public Works will work with the police department to send a letter to all affected residences so that they can start that permitting process. So we'll kind of figure out what that, when we post signs versus when, just to give folks enough time to get that application in and get the permits for their vehicles.
So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're doing what we did on South Campus for many, many years. It's nothing different. If memory serves me, that is only during the regular school months. That's not active during the summer months. Give me some information on time of day and time of year and its application.
Mayor, members of the council, as proposed for North Campus, this would be basically 24/7, so it would be permit parking only. Reason being is North Campus operates much differently than South Campus. North Campus has much larger event venues with the theater, the athletic fields, that they're running tournaments all summer long. So parking becomes an issue year-round. And then as well as the school year, prevent students from parking in certain areas adjacent to people's homes along Bald Eagle and Division primarily. So.
Okay. Well, I support this. I guess my note to the community is this is new on the north side, and there's always some trial and error, so we're putting our best foot forward, and we want feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, and we can always adapt and change. I'll just say give it an honest chance in a long, decent period of time to see where the kinks are, if there are any, and give it a shot, and I think the council will be nimble and responsive if we need to be, if there are any issues to work out. All right, any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That resolution is approved as well. Mr. Copy.
Mayor, members of the council, just one other quick update regarding the North Campus area. Ramsey County has also have their plan for Bald Eagle, signing that no parking north of 9th Street to the tracks. They too are working on getting signage and materials ordered, so that should be in. They're hoping to get it in before the first day of school, but they're hoping in the next few weeks that would be included as well. The area adjacent to the old tennis field or tennis courts will also be signed no parking. We don't have a specific boulevard restoration plan at this time, but it will be signed no parking. In addition to being linearly along Bald Eagle, it will also have kind of those perpendicular parking spaces signed no parking as well. And hopefully, depending on staff availability, we can get the county to get that restored next spring. So it will come. In my discussions with the county, they just short staff and a lot of projects and things this summer that they weren't able to get that followed up on. And then they also they had just over the summer. They had some staff turnover, so their traffic engineer kind of got on board middle to late summer here. So he will be working on that 9th Street and Bald Eagle intersection, looking at the stop conditions there. So that's coming. It's not that they didn't forget about it. That is that they had some staffing issues, some staff turnover. So
Very good. Thank you. All right, item 8A, new business, a liquor license review. Ms. Longendijk, when you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here tonight to report recent liquor violations that will require council to review and consider exercising its penalty structure outlined in the liquor section of the municipal code. Earlier this summer, the city was notified by the Alcohol and Gambling Enforcement Division, or AGE, that White Bear Wine and Spirits was unlawfully selling alcoholic beverages. They were purchasing products for resale from another liquor store instead of purchasing the products at wholesale. In addition, they were selling certain food items that an exclusive liquor store is not allowed to sell. AGE imposed a civil fine of $1,000 for the violations, which was paid promptly by the business owner. According to state statute, the city may impose an additional penalty to AGE's civil fine. The municipal code and fee schedule outline the administrative penalties, which correspond with the number of violation occurrences. This is the first liquor violation for White Bear Wine and Spirits. Staff does recommend an administrative penalty to document the violation and ensure future violations are handled accordingly. The owner was notified of tonight's meeting and was invited to attend. So staff recommends the City Council adopt the resolution imposing an administrative fine of $150 as outlined in the fee schedule and recording this as the establishment's first liquor license violation. I should add that subsequent violations within the next 18 months could result in a 7-day suspension and greater fines issued by the city. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Longendijk. Council, any questions or comments? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Longendijk, so I'm supportive of the recommendation. My recollection is that the owner is a relatively new liquor business operator, or is there, okay, I'm concerned about how do we make sure that there's not a second one. Now, obviously it's on him, but where's the education process, access to support, whatever? What does that look like in a situation? I know what it looks like when we have a bar who overserves. We have support and education components, but what happens in the case of a liquor store, if anything?
Councilmember Edberg, well, just for background, the owner is a relative of a previous liquor store owner, so it's a family business. They should know liquor laws.
Okay.
I would say with the letter from the city and the letter from AGE and just running a business related to liquor, it is their responsibility to follow the law. I wouldn't say the staff would use any additional resources to educate them. I think the 2 letters is enough for them to know that this is their first violation, and second violations or more would come with more stricter penalties.
Councilmember Edberg, I would also add to that, upon opening in a liquor establishment, they get what's called a buyer's card from AGE. And that essentially establishes where you may buy liquor or who you may buy it from. And it's not a wholesale retailer.
Yeah.
This is I want to say a more politically correct word for common sense when running a liquor store establishment.
Well, I do want to note one thing, because on our agenda item, it's liquor license review, and we've got a violation of the liquor license. I'm not condoning anyone that violates the ordinance. I want to make it clear, at least from my standpoint, there are great variations in violating your liquor license. Selling to a minor, that's a big deal. What we're talking about here is a violation within a very complicated, very interesting, very old distribution model for who can sell which hooch there, and you can't go buy a bottle of Jameson from your competitor because you're out and then sell it at retail and all that. So again, I'm not condoning it, but this to me is, okay, fine, you're gonna pay your fine, let's move on. Don't do it again, but this doesn't really get me too hot and bothered like a underage sale would, things that actually, in my opinion, affect public safety. So I support it. I think we should adopt it, impose the fine, and move on. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The resolution is approved. Item 9A, Downtown Social District Request. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Main Street Inc. Submitted a request to the city to consider a social district in downtown White Bear Lake. Within that letter, which is in your packet, they stated that they believe it will enhance the vibrancy and economic vitality in the area by increasing foot traffic, offering a more dynamic experience for residents and visitors. They do not wish to assume any management role for any social district that the city would enact, but they will collaborate throughout planning and implementation. Social districts are new to Minnesota, and to be honest with you, I don't know, I'm not very familiar with their, other states and how they operate. So they're new to Minnesota. They allow communities to authorize through special legislation to designate public areas where alcohol can be carried and consumed within that certain area. There are only 3 authorized cities that have this special legislation in the state as of now. Anoka was the first one, and they're in their 3rd year of their pilot. Shakopee and Stillwater both received special legislation in 2024. Shakopee is about to kick off their pilot for 1 month this fall, and then they have another weekend, I think, in December of when they're going to have their social district active. And then Stillwater, while they do have special legislation, they hit pause after an initial public feedback period, which I find interesting. So still watching Stillwater, but that's just the status. And then that is Anoka's social district map. So highlights of the social district special law, there would be designated branded cups which identify which establishment served the beverages. Participating establishments must be within those social district boundaries, whatever they are defined as. The city designates hours and days when consumption is allowed in a social district. Beverages must be finished or disposed of before entering a new establishment. That was something that I learned recently. After 2 years of implementation, then the city must submit a report to the state outlining various areas. And I don't know what that report entails because this is still brand new. So I suspect Anoka is just now writing their first report. Steps that the city would need to take is first building a consensus from the city council if the council is interested in researching and acting a social district in White Bear Lake. This is the first time this has been brought before the city council, so I wanted to just have a discussion tonight. And Main Street was invited. They also had their board meeting tonight, which is probably just wrapping up, so I suspect they would be here if they were able to. If interested, so step 1 is getting consensus tonight, whether you are interested in researching this or not. If you are interested, seeking community feedback and learning from Anoka, Shakopee, and watching Stillwater. Then staff would bring those findings back to a future city council meeting. City Council would direct my office to engage local state legislators for that special legislation. It does need support from our senator as well as our House of Representative. If it reaches legislation and if it's adopted into law, into state law, the topic would be brought back to the council. Once it would be passed into law, then you would adopt a resolution accepting that special law, defining the social district boundaries and regulations, and you would adopt an ordinance formally establishing that district, and then we would implement that. And this, as I've said a few times, this is brand new. So we've internally staff has come up with some factors for consideration. They're outlined in your staff report, but are also on the screen here. I think I would urge the council to, when thinking about doing this or even researching it, is consider the overall vision for downtown and our community, and would a social district align with the city's strategic plan. Think about public safety and infrastructure resources. So that would infrastructure resources, what I mean by that is in addition to, police and fire, public works, trash pickup, all of those things, street sweeping, et cetera. Economic impacts, I don't know that I know them at this point, if it would be beneficial or not. Nearby residential impacts, downtown is butts single-family residential homes. It does not have a buffer zone of apartments or multifamily or other things like that. So think about potential residential impacts. Market Fest and special event operations. Is there an impact on a social district, making those events become not family-friendly? I don't know. Internally, our organizational capacity, time and resources of city staff. Again, does this align with the city's strategic plan? Does staff have time to implement that? I don't know that I can answer that at this point without learning more from other cities, or Anoka, I guess. And then, beverage container waste and where that is all disposed of, and again, street sweeping and public works and trash pickup. So tonight I'm seeking your feedback on potentially implementing or, I guess Main Street's request to provide direction to staff on whether we should take next steps to look at a social district in White Bear Lake or not. We do have the Chief of Police, Community Development Director, Public Works Director, and Assistant City Manager here tonight, all for this discussion if you have questions at this point. And there was one more thing I was going to say and I forgot it, so I'll come back to me maybe later. So for now, that's where I'll stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I'm going to share my thoughts, and you can take it with a grain of salt because the ultimate decision will lie with someone else who will be sitting in this chair. But I do have a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to this, which is extreme skepticism that this is at all a good idea. I get why the business owners like it. I get why their communities wanted to adopt it. And if it all goes really, really great and people walk around with a beer and that's about it, fine. These things have a way of kind of spiraling out of control, in my opinion. I also don't know how you have any kind of district that doesn't include basically all of where Market Fest is. And I don't want Market Fest to be a drinking scene. It's a family-friendly scene. That's what Market Fest is. So whatever incremental increase in commerce that it generates, I think we more than lose by changing the character of what our downtown, family-friendly downtown is like. Having said all that, I don't think it hurts to have staff spend some time just getting some feedback from the 3 other communities that are implementing it, good, bad, or otherwise. But I think this is a new concept, and there is no compelling, need for this that would precipitate the city pushing for any kind of legislative change this cycle. So that's where I stand on this issue. Ms. Crawford, you remember what you forgot?
I did, thank you,
Okay.
Mayor. Just, so the Main Street Board did vote to submit this letter, this request that we investigate this. I want to be clear that Main Street does not reflect all businesses downtown, and so I'm not certain how much engagement that they did, but I think that's worth noting that, we place a very high value on feedback from Main Street, but it doesn't, it may not include all of the businesses that we would need significant amount of public engagement still. Thank you.
You may not have an answer to this question, but do you know if the vote was unanimous or if it was just a majority of the board approved it?
Mayor, I do not know that off the top of my head.
I'd just
I
be
can
curious.
inquire.
That's okay. Thank you. Councilmember Hughes.
Mr. Mayor, I would take your comments even further. I note their comment here, at this time, White Bear Lake Main Street does not intend to assume a management role for the social district. And I would say it doesn't even seem like they are going to assume an educational or investigatory role, and they're going to have city staff do all of that. And it wasn't too long ago that we were talking about where city staff should be putting their time and their effort and how that's going to fit into the budget. And this is the role of, to me, another staff person. And I don't feel like that's necessarily the way the city staff should go. If White Bear Lake Main Street wants to have a social district which benefits White Bear Lake Main Street and not all of the city, then they can investigate further. They can go to Stillwater, Anoka, and all of the other places and see how it's falling out. They can do an investigation of where beverage container waste would go and how other cities are maintaining the lines around the social district and how it fits into what are those economic impacts. They can go and find out all that information, and our city staff can wait and take that information from them when they've completed it and made the ask for it in a more comprehensive manner. I understand why they would have done that. This is a great benefit to them if you can have more people wandering around with a beer, for sure. But I think this is like a Hail Mary to the city then to take on, and I don't think that that's an appropriate place to put our tax dollars at this point.
Any other thoughts? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crawford, so the statute that permits social districts refers to alcohol only, no other intoxicants, no other smoking, whatever. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And is there any sense of what time, either days, hours, whatever, Main Street is suggesting? Is this like 24/7, 365? Is it between 4 and 10 on weekends? Has there been any of that kind of narrowing or definition discussed so far? Or is this pretty much hey, this is what we want, here's a blank slate, please start giving it to us?
Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, there haven't been those discussions yet. Much research needs to be done. If we are going to start that conversation tonight, I would not be supportive of a social district enacted during Market Fest. With that said, I think it would be very challenging for our police officers who are already there dedicated and working overtime hours to ensure someone's cup is not a social district cup. So I'll leave it there.
So where I come down at the moment is we can't be the first. I don't want to be the second, third, fourth, or fifth. It's like we can watch what happens in other places. We can observe, learn. It's not a priority for my use of staff time or for how I think our city should use staff time. And similar to Councilmember Hughes, I read their letter of we're not taking responsibility for oversight, management, et cetera. We'll help get it off the ground, but we're not going to help administer it, which puts it into our lap, and I don't want it in our lap. So I'm not inclined to ask you to spend your time or staff's time researching. I like Councilmember Hughes' suggestion that if somebody else wants to do that research and submit it to us after we have more communities, more experience, then we can validate that experience and have a discussion later. But I'm not inclined to say yes today. But that's only two of us, so. Okay.
4. All right. I'm ready to move on. The consensus is this is not a high priority, so staff shouldn't be spending any time on it. I think the Main Street is free to follow Councilmember Hughes' advice. If you want to do some research, we'll respond from any input or requests from the community, but there's a big step that has to happen before that we even look into it further. So I think staff has their answer.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank
and
you.
council.
All right. Item 10, communications from the city manager. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Heather Gustafson was selected again this year as a League of Minnesota Cities 2025 Legislator of Distinction. So congratulations to Senator Heather Gustafson. We appreciate all of her hard work and support on behalf of White Bear Lake down at the Capitol. And this is the hot topic, at least, that comes through our phones this week and a little bit of last week. The post office sent out this postcard. I didn't receive one. I think some of the council has, some I think have not, which I find also interesting. But they are proposing to relocate part of this branch from downtown White Bear Lake to somewhere else, give or take 3, or what's that say, 2 miles, 3 miles away? 2 miles away. That's all the information that we have. At this point, the city was not contacted about this prior to a few of you and a couple of residents sending me text messages about it. So we are trying to talk to someone at the post office about the possibility of retail moving out of downtown White Bear Lake. As a city manager, I'm not supportive of that. I will go on the record and say that. I don't know if council's the same, if I'm on the same page as council, but that's where I stand as city manager. I think that the post office is very important to our downtown, especially for those who do not have transportation and use the retail portion of the post office. So all of this is just to say I wanted to gauge council's take your temperature on whether you would like to put this on the next agenda to have a letter of, a letter of support for retail in downtown White Bear post office, or something that we could get to Representative McCollum's office, as well as, I guess, send it to North Carolina, where we're supposed to send things for the post office, or any feedback that the council has, if anyone wants to discuss this.
Let me just start by saying, if council wants to adopt some resolution, I don't care. It sounds like your phone's getting lit up a little bit. So if for no other reason, this is a good opportunity to at least acknowledge to residents, and I'll give you my personal opinion, I think we have very, very limited ability to influence this. And I don't want to project this self-important, well, we're going to adopt a resolution and we're going to contact Congresswoman McCollum. Okay, we can do that. I think the federal government's going to do pretty much what it wants to do. So to the extent residents really want to put their best foot forward, write your congressperson, write your one of the 2 senators, I think that's probably going to carry more weight, but that's just my opinion. Councilmember Edward.
Yeah, I mirror your comments, Mayor. The distinction that I'm seeing or hearing is they're proposing, okay, so for those of us who have tried to make use of their retail service during a busy part of the day, which is many parts, it's not just one particular, you can stand in a line that goes out the window or out the first set of glass doors and out into the lobby, and staff, in my experience, have done quite well, but I've taken to going to other post offices. I'm lucky. I've got one in Willarney, I've got one in Vadnais, and they're all about equidistant, and they have less lines, so it's just, I go to elsewhere. But the point is, they do have limited retail space. They are proposing to keep employment here, which is good. Yeah, this is so they would keep their trucks and carriers using the current facility and look for a separate retail facility somewhere within. I think, I agree with the city manager. Ideally, we would keep that present in our downtown community. But the mayor is probably also right that there's only so much that we can influence the federal government on. So it's like, I guess if they're going to move, find a place, another place in White Bear Lake. But that's kind of the gist of it is, I don't know that we're in danger of losing the foot traffic that might generate in downtown for the retail service. But beyond that, the property it doesn't sound like the property's coming up for sale. Doesn't sound like there's a redevelopment opportunity, anything like that. It's just, where do the people stand while they wait to buy stamps?
Councilmember West.
I mean, I still think, I agree that we should try to keep the retail in the city. Again, for the same reason that everybody else is stating, I just think, people are used to it, and we've got folks who are relying on it who don't have transportation and convenience. But like, I think it's a good idea to send a letter. I know that the likelihood of it making a difference is low, but also it's zero if we don't send a letter. So like, if we do support keeping the retail there, I don't see any like problem or negative to sending a letter from us supporting, hey, could you please consider us, thinking that retail should stay, so.
Anybody else feel strongly about drafting a letter? I'll just say this, if we're gonna draft a letter, fine, but this is what I think it should read. Hey, retail's important, it should stay, but if you're gonna take the retail out, then vacate the premises altogether so we can use a higher and better use of it. Because the plan is not having retail, but it's just gonna be a distribution center. So it's just a dumb big building with trucks coming and going with no actual retail benefit. If I had a magic wand, I'd say, great. Sorry for those that benefit from the retail side, but that's a big, huge piece of property. If the federal government would just leave, I'm sure there are any number of higher and better uses that would come in there. So I don't think we should do the letter. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but to the extent that it can do something, great. We want to keep retail, or go pound sand, federal government, and open up that space to a higher and better use. That's where I stand. Councilmember Hughes.
I'd like that letter, and I think we should also CC the Congress and senators.
Yeah, we'll send it to the Donald as well, just in case, the president wants to take a look. Might want to weigh in.
But they have the opportunity to influence.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay. Anybody opposed to writing some sort of a letter?
I
No.
will add this to the September 9th City Council agenda. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. We're adjourned.